Have you ever felt a bit rejected? On Sunday morning, just gone, we were looking at some parts of Matthew's Gospel from the end of chapter 13, start of chapter 14. 3 incidents we looked at, and in the first 2, Jesus finds himself being rejected. It's never a nice feeling, is it? First of all, he goes to his hometown, Nazareth, where he grew up, and he's teaching there, he's doing miracles there as well. But people aren't impressed. Well, they kind of are. They say, well, how come he's such a great teacher? How come he can do these amazing things? But then they're like, well, but this is the kid we knew as a little boy, growing up with a son of a carpenter, with Mary, his mother, and his brothers and sisters. We know this guy. He's getting ideas above his station. He can't come and do these things here. We've known him since he was a lad. And they reject him, basically. Then you've got an incident which doesn't involve Jesus directly. It involves, in many ways, his closest ally, a man called John the Baptist. John had baptised Jesus when he started his public ministry. John was like an Old Testament prophet. He knew the law of God. And John had confronted a man called Herod, who was a ruler in Galilee. And he had basically told Herod, look, the woman you're married to, it's not lawful, it's not right that you're married to her. You've basically bumped off your brother so that you can marry his widow. No, you can't do that. And, well, Herod didn't like it. He wanted rid of John the Baptist. He didn't want rid of him in quite the way it ended up happening, but he wanted rid of him, and sure enough, he beheaded him. Basically, that was a rejection not just of John the Baptist, but of God's law, of God's commands. It's a rejection of Jesus, ultimately, who teaches the same things that John had said to Herod. We can react in these ways to Jesus too. I think there's a sense in which sometimes perhaps we think we know Jesus, think actually Jesus is something that as a culture perhaps, or you as an individual, we've outgrown. We know all about that. We've moved on from that. It's maybe kids stuff from when we were little at school, but Jesus doesn't have anything to say to me now. I think there's something like that with the people in Nazareth. They thought they knew him. They couldn't quite take in that he might have something to say to them that they should listen to. The fact is, Jesus loves us and he has wonderful news to tell us, and we should listen. There's much more to him than perhaps we realise. But then we might think as well that, but he tells me to do stuff and not do stuff that's just going to spoil my fun in life, frankly. I don't want him telling me what to do. But again, it's out of love that he gives his commands. He actually knows what's best for human flourishing, our good and our joy and life to the full. It's a bit like with kids. There are certain things you tell kids, don't do that. Because actually we love them. I do that with my children all the time. No, don't stick your hand in the boiling water. That's not a good idea. Sometimes they reject such advice. Never stuck their hand in boiling water, but I've had to very forcibly say no and pull them away. Why is that? Why do we sometimes think that way about Jesus and his commands? We reject him. It's all too easy to do. You might think Jesus would want to wash his hands of people like that, people like me. But the very next incident is fascinating. Amazing, actually, as it shows us Jesus' character and what he's actually like. He's heard about the death of John the Baptist. John was not just a close ally, but he was his cousin, a family member. And he knows, in all likelihood, if Herod had it in for John, then Herod will have it in for him. And he actually withdraws to a quiet, out of the way, in a boat place. It's almost as if he needs a bit of space. But a crowd follows him. And he might think, he'd be like, oh, come on, I just need a bit of me time. Okay? Or me and my Father in heaven time at least. Just leave me alone for a while. I've had enough rejection. Just leave me alone. But that's not it at all. As soon as he realises the crowd, he has compassion on them, we're told. He has compassion on them. And he heals the sick and helps them and shows great compassion and love towards them. He's got time for them. Absolutely he has. People who no doubt had rejected him in ways themselves. And still he says, no, come, the door's open. Let me listen, let me help. And he does. And then when they're hungry, The disciples are all for sending them away. It's like, oh, we've had enough now, Jesus. You must have too. Let's just send them off to the local town to get some food. And Jesus says, no. No, they can stay. They say, you feed them. They've got 5 loaves and 2 fish. But it's enough. In Jesus' hands, it's enough for the disciples to go and feed that whole crowd so that they can spend even more time with him and he can give more of himself to them. That's amazing. And it's great hope that it offers as well. Perhaps you're someone who has rejected Jesus. You've thought perhaps you knew about him when really you've never really stopped to look and see what he's like. Perhaps you've thought, well, it's just a load of commands and he's just going to ruin my fun. Not thinking, why would he give commands? Why would he say this is right, this is wrong? Is it out of love, actually? Yeah, it is. If that's you, then you can still find out. He'll still say, oh, my door's still open. Still come. I can help you. I can show you my love. I can provide for you so that you can have life to the full. Stop and take a look. Get to know Jesus, the real Jesus. Not the one that you might think you know. Not the one who's a spoilsport, he's not. The one who is very worth knowing and who will be a king who loves you and has your best at heart.